Hi, everyone. We are so glad to have so many people here this evening or afternoon, depending on your time zone, to really learn more about our advocacy efforts for fertility equality. So thank you so much for joining us. Kicking us off tonight is Sherman Taylor, Board Chairman of Men Having Babies.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to be able to speak to everyone and welcome everyone and kick off the event tonight. Thank you so much for coming, for your time. Just a little bit about myself. So my name is Sherman Taylor. I've been with the board for over 4 years. I'm married, and my husband and I live in Ohio. We have two boys via surrogacy and egg donation that we've conceived. They're ages 7 and 3. So they're a little bit bigger than the picture behind me. And I've been working with the board for, like I said, over 4 years. And I'm just excited that we're able to venture into this foray of creating a forum for research and advocacy. It's really an important outcropping of the overall Men Having Baby mission. And we're excited that we're able to bring this event to New York today and to this virtual platform. So a little bit about the organization. Men Having Babies really started in 2005 and began as a peer-to-peer coaching organization to enable men to figure out how to have biological children. It became a nonprofit in 2012. And then most recently, in the last couple of years, we've added this arm of advocacy and research to really bring together individuals that are going to help support promoting the LGBTQ equitable definition of infertility, allow for there to be a conversation and dialogue around the ideas and the latest understanding of, for all aspects of surrogacy, including insurance, egg donation, laws, maternity and delivery, and benefits that are allowable. And so we're just excited to continue that conversation with this night's event. And we would not be able to have this forum without our partners in Equality New York and Resolve, the National Infertility Association, and EMD Serrano, which we really appreciate all the support and sponsorship from these organizations. So thank you very much, Resolve, Equality, and EMD Serrano. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ron Poole-Diane, the Executive Director and founding member of Men Having Babies, and a passionate advocate for surrogacy and IVF transformation in the country and the globe. So Ron, thank you so much, and everyone enjoy the event.
Thank you, Sherman. Men Having Babies was really founded when we realized that we can't help people with affordability by staying a group at the LGBT Center in New York. It was the realization that it is such a growing reality that so many people can become parents, and the more people were able to become parents, the more it became painful to the people who couldn't, just because they couldn't afford it. So we had this little idea that we can maybe do something that could help people with financial assistance. Many of you already know that we have done, a lot, perhaps from what you can expect from our organization like ours, but it's still just a drop in the bucket. So we feel that as more and more legal achievements are being made, from marriage equality to the Child Parent Security Act, the reform for surrogacy in New York and elsewhere, it is once again only making it possible for people to take advantage of these family building options, but not making it accessible to them. So it is obviously not a small task, not something certainly that Men Having Babies can take up on its own. So the idea is to, as we do some advocacy and as we sit in this, very advantageous situation that we know so many people in the industry, in the professional community, in the advocacy community, that maybe we can put everybody together and see how can we move beyond these obstacles? How can we try to set an agenda? And as an aspiration, and I think as a possible goal, we're saying, how about if we got together all of our energies, all of our connections, all of our knowledge, and try to see whether we can get to a point where in 4 years, the average surrogacy cost for intended parents are going to be half. And obviously, we didn't measure exactly what that would mean, but we know that there are a lot of opportunities to chip away in the costs. And we want to phrase that as a matter of equality, not just a matter of advocacy or goals. And if we have all these tracks together, from insurance to coverage at work to affordable financing, charitable giving, and pro bono service, all those things together, maybe we can chip away enough with that. And we can only do it, as I said, together. And the reason this is a matter of equality is because family building should not be dependent on your wealth or your sexual orientation or your gender. So all of those aspects, or if come together as a one cause, saying it is possible to have all this wide agenda and cover all these issues. So as I mentioned, there is the aspect of discrimination against LGBT people, and in particular gay males, just because we have the most daunting project when we set up to become parents. We need the most assistance as gay men, and the financial barriers are highest for us in that respect. However, if a heterosexual couple finds themselves at the end of an infertility track that puts them in a place where they need to have a surrogate help them, they're just the same as us. So we really need to join forces here and try to do this together. So throughout the evening, we will not be talking, we're not giving you a lecture, we're not explaining or exhausting any one of these topics. Certainly we're not we're not in a position to know enough about these. But together with consulting with all our partners, we think that these are the major areas where progress can be made. And if we get this out there as an agenda, then hopefully every one of you will be able to, either during the presentation when we get to a Q&A or later during the networking time, or later, come forward and say, I want to help. I know something about one of these topics. I can help. So, or I'm interested in, seeing how I can help, even if I'm not sure how to. So please don't expect us to know all the answers. Don't expect us to know all the court cases. Don't expect us to know all the legal minute details. However, we have some people speaking after that will be able to provide some expertise on some of these topics.
We're going to be talking kind of key points that Ron brought up earlier, and really addressing those key factors in fertility equality. But we'll start first by Sarah, if you're able to join. I know she's busy behind the scenes with okay, wonderful.
Hey everyone. So just to start off this conversation, what we're doing is intentionally bringing in parents, surrogates, the professional community to have this continuing ongoing dialogue to really make sure that we're advocating for what's best in this industry. And as a part of that ongoing conversation, our advisory board really plays a key role in driving those conversations, making sure that we're making progress. And I know a lot of our advisory board members, if they're not here already, will be joining us tonight. A couple of them I'm troubleshooting with behind the scenes right now, so they're coming. You'll hear from Virginia Hart later tonight. Dr. Danishman and Dr. Ringler, I know, plan to join us. Vicki and Steve, so Vicki Ferrara and Steve Schneider, and Diane Hinson. So really, most of our advisory board members, we expect to have a presence here tonight, and we're so thankful for the work that they do on this advocacy effort.
And I see Brad Snyder is also with us.
So we just heard from Sylvia on the latest in research, but we're also going to be talking about IVF insurance laws, maternity insurance, coverage at work, tax regulations, and affordable financing and charitable giving. We'll be going through it in brief and then opening up the discussion with our panelists a bit deeper. If you have questions in the meantime, there is that Q&A feature on the side, so feel free to type in your questions as they come to your mind. Type them in if you'd like to. We're not going to be addressing any questions as we kind of quickly cover these topics, but once we're with the panelists and diving deeper into the subjects, we'll go through our Q&A as well. So feel free to use that or the chat feature as well. And then I'll let Ron get us started with, let me skip ahead again, fertility equality goals.
So as I mentioned before, the topics that Lisa presented are topics that we think we can do some work in to, first of all, have more components of what it takes for us to build families covered. So you can think of it as deeper coverage. For instance, in IVF coverage where there is a state mandate or employers that are self-insured and provide those, whether it's through taxation or the other tracks we're talking about, sometimes nothing is covered. Sometimes only infertility medications and treatment is covered without IVF. And with organizations like Resolve and others, there's a lot of effort to expand it then to the more expensive and less common help that infertile people need, which is IVF. And then those people also need third-party egg donation and surrogacy. Then there are a lot of non-medical costs. So we know that that's one track we're trying to expand, or rather have deeper coverage for. And then this coverage needs to also be inclusive, because the reason it is not currently is a lot of it depends on the current conventional definitions of infertility. So that's another thing we're going to talk about today, and that is the key to also include what we sometimes call social infertility, which is the what we are as a category, gay men for sure. That's our status. And then, of course, getting deeper or more components of coverage, getting it in more inclusive way needs to become wider and wider in more states, more companies. If we're talking about coverage of infertility at work, or more types of benefits, taxation, benefits, parenting leave acts, those all affect how much we can afford surrogacy. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, a lot of our thinking about what we now hopefully coin as fertility equality starts with dialogues we've had with our partners. So we'll be meeting at the trenches in Albany or elsewhere doing advocacy for surrogacy or marriage equality, only realizing that there's other advocacy happening out there for instance, for IVF benefits that is not targeted enough to make it more inclusive. For instance, some bills like New Jersey, like New York, the IVF bill, it says that you shouldn't discriminate against people based on sexual orientation, but that doesn't help much, because all it means is that if I had a uterus, they wouldn't care that I'm gay. So the key here is to change the definition of infertility. The CDC and all these IVF bills throughout the country and insurance companies themselves, they all have their own conventional definitions of infertility. And right now, none of them really is good enough. So with Resolve and the terrific help of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, Kathy Sakimura, we were thinking of what would be the best way to define that. So now Resolve has a model act that is available with other links and resources at the event page, if you haven't seen that yet. But the key here, first of all, that no longer is infertility defined as a disease or condition. We thought enough not to be considered as a disease, that homosexuality is no longer considered a disease or a condition. So one word that has been suggested here, and we think it works, is that it's also could be a status. And as you can see in the second bullet here, it is a status of not being able to produce either as a single or with a partner without medical intervention. So you need medical intervention. You are basically, in order to form a family, you are basically should be at the same footing as somebody that needs medical intervention because something's wrong with their biological reproductive organs. Next. But then we also realized that even if a bill somewhere would have that for insurance purposes, would have that definition, it is also very important to make sure that they don't once again find a way to not to exclude us by saying, yes, we consider you being fertile. So if you need an injection, hormonal injection, or if you need to retrieve eggs, then you'll be covered. So no, another important component here is to add in all these circumstances another clause that says surrogacy is included or third party is included, that you cannot exclude somebody based on the fact that the covered individual is not getting the treatment, but rather a third party. So those are at the core of the changes that have to be done. And we'll talk later with Risa Levine from Resolve about a little more about this and how we hope to get that accomplished.
So kind of moving on and broadening up these topics, I'll be talking about maternity insurance exclusions and liens. And, with kind of the growing number of people going through surrogacy and how now widely accepted it is, on the downside, there are more and more exclusions to insurance policies covering maternity care and delivery. And I know from experience with the guys I've worked with in our program, having to purchase an additional policy either through the healthcare exchange or through other means is, for a lot of them, just above their price point. It adds such a huge cost component to a journey that it really starts to exclude a lot of people. So not only are we seeing an increase in exclusions for insurance, I would say most of our intended parents do have to purchase a policy, whereas in years ago, it was not always the case. You also have the issue of availability, waiting for open enrollment, waiting for that time period to be able to move forward with that. And we also have another cost issue of liens, predominantly in California, but I believe other states as well, where there might not be a clear exclusion, but there is a lien on the surrogate's compensation. And unfortunately, that does price a lot of people out of it. They just can't afford to move forward. And so really in broadening that definition of infertility and broadening that access to coverage kind of brings up these other ideas of using the intended parents' healthcare insurance to cover the maternity and the delivery costs of that pregnancy. But we'll be diving really more into this and exploring it in more detail later on this evening with Virginia and Steve. But it is definitely an important, critical part of fertility equality.
So picking up the conversation and kind of going a little further. So we just talked about situations where the law mandates coverage, but thankfully there are a growing number of employers who are starting to offer workplace benefits above and beyond what is mandated by the law. So the issue of coverage at work is something that we're really passionate about, and we've been working with Resolve and other partners to really broaden the number of the number of employers who are offering this. So as Ron touched on before, even if benefits are offered at work, we need to make sure that that definition of infertility includes same-sex couples and singles, so that benefits that are available are something that can be accessed by our community. We also, beyond just medical coverage benefits, we can start talking about covering non-medical surrogacy expenses. So we know medical expenses are not the only expensive part of a journey. So if we can start to have potentially allowances or something that can cover the non-medical expenses, that would really be a great step forward to lowering the overall cost of a journey. And so what we're hoping to do through advocacy and healthy competition is really to encourage more employers to expand and deepen the benefits that they offer. And so in order to do that, we think the best way is to make sure that the community at large is educated and empowered to talk about benefits that are offered through their employer, to advocate to make sure that they have access to them. And this really goes kind of hand in hand with even after delivery, once we get to having a successful journey, you've got a baby, then having employers expand parental leave to guys as well. So those are kind of the important points for when we're talking about what we can do and what that conversation is about coverage at work. And again, Risa is going to tell us more about that later today. And then on Sunday as well, Resolve will be sharing more information on those initiatives.
Thank you, Sarah. And then with regards to tax regulations and the ability to have a more, what we think would be a more fair and equal taxation policy. The bad news is that it's really not just gay people that are excluded right now. There is an explicit regulation by the IRS that prohibits probably most of the expenses associated with surrogacy to be deducted from your taxable income. There has been one court case that in the last decade that went up until I think 2017 and got to the 11th Circuit. As it turns out, probably the wrong circuit to get to, and has been denied. A lot of interesting, information can come out of that. And as we said, we're not expert. Maybe there are other attempts out there. Maybe some people even can slip through the cracks and submit some expenses already. But the bottom line is that there's a lot that could be done here, either through outright deductions as medical expenses or specific deductions of legal expenses, the way legal expenses are recognized for other family building tracks like adoption, or even flexible health accounts or whatever other tools are out there, even if they're limited, such that it could help a little more. Once again, try to make sure that we have more of those benefits components covered, and that it is, if so, also grounded around a more inclusive definition of infertility, so that it's also going to be inclusive. So once again, we're going to hope and depend on the expertise and connections and goodwill of people here that will be able to point us the right way, and or just help us coordinate an effort along these lines. We do have a better, probably a better administration right now to advance those issues. So maybe it's a window of opportunity here.
And then diving into our last little subject that we have on our docket this evening, I'm going to be talking about affordable financing, charitable giving, what's currently in place and what a lot of people turn to with the lack of kind of these other areas that we're hoping to build and have more accessible in those areas. Right now, this is a very common way of people using these methods to bridge that financial gap to help them afford their surrogacy journey. A lot of times people do take out loans to help this. Really finding accessible low interest loans can help. A lot of people are having to take personal loans, which carry a huge interest rate. So not only do you have the burden of repayment, but you also have that added expense of pretty significant interest charges. Really having available low interest loans or interest-free loans. We'll be hearing, a little later from Kim with the Hebrew Free Loan Society about their programs of offering interest-free loans. We've also formed a partnership with them using our own capital to issue out those interest-free loans, really helping people in a more significant way bridge that financial gap. And then, of course, we have charitable giving grants like our program here at Men Having Babies, but there are many throughout serving kind of this industry. The unfortunate part about that is that there is always a greater need for these than across the board we have those resources. So certainly a huge help, a huge part of making things affordable. But it can't do it on its own. There is a much greater need than any sort of organization or grants or anything would help to bridge that gap. It has to be a combination effort from all of these things. But we'll be talking about this particular part a little bit later on with Kim from Hebrew Free Loan Society. And that's kind of it for our coordinated PowerPoint here, but I'll turn it back over to Ron to dive in deeper to these subjects.